gentle light that falls around me. You're the first thought on my mind. And let our voices rise, all creation cries, sing out in endless hallelujah from this moment on. Join with heaven's song, sing out in endless hallelujah. In the moments that you go unnoticed, in the ordinary day, countless miracles of life around us, pouring like arrows to your name. And let our voices rise, all creation cries, sing out endless hallelujah from this moment on. Join with heaven's song, singing out in endless we join with the song of heaven today. Only a moment to live this life, like shooting stars, burning up the night, until heaven's opened and we arrive. In your presence, Lord, in your presence, only a moment to live this life, like shooting stars, burning up the night, until heaven's open and we arrive. In your presence, Lord, in your presence, let our voices rise, all creation cries, singing out in endless hallelujah from this moment on. Join with heaven's song, singing out in endless There's nothing better, there's nothing better, there's nothing better than this right now. There's nothing better, there's nothing better, there's nothing better than this right now. In the evening when I lay my head down, in the evening when I close my eyes, you're still the only one I want to cling to. You're the last thought on my mind. in the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender, you are breaking new ground. So I yield to you until you care for him.
Great. Well, it's great to be here. Feels very much an honor for me to be here, and just really excited to look into this stuff. And I kind of feel like I've always been in the camp of, I wish there was 7 days of rest in the week. That would suit me perfectly. But, you know, the more kind of over the last few days, having looked into this, and, you know, we've been doing, Maria and I have been trying it at home for the last 3 weeks, which has had it's been interesting. So I feel like right off the start, it's something that is slowly starting to come to a place of understanding, and I feel like the more I look into it, it's just like such a massive thing.
Yeah.
But feel excited about it and just what's ahead. And I know hearing from Scott last week, just again some of the practical applications, which hopefully we can unpack a little bit tonight. And as I say, a lot of it still feels like we're getting there. We're kind of getting to a place where we understand. I've got kids, which added dynamic, which I know Scott touched on. But yeah, so Trev, I know you guys have kind of been going through it probably for a while longer, and I know God has really kind of started revealing stuff to you. So why don't we kick off just hearing a little bit about, you know, what you learning on the road?
Sounds like a good plan. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, Sabbath, it's something that has been rattling around in my heart and in my brain for a little while. I think it was well over, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was just in the scriptures and I was reading, and I got to Mark chapter 2, and it says this in Mark. I should have had my Bible here at the place, but there you go. Mark chapter 2, and they're talking about the Sabbath. Let me get to it. And here it says this. One Sabbath he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never heard what David did? When he was in need and was hungry, he and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and he ate the bread of the presence, which it is not lawful for any but the priest to eat. And he also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." And I read that, Chris, and that phrase, Sabbath was made for man, just stuck in my head. And then it's like God took it over the course of the next couple of days, and I'd be praying about something completely different, and the voice of the Lord would just come to me and say, "I made Sabbath for you. I made it for you." And I was like, that's odd. Because we don't really practice Sabbath. I've not really looked into it much. It's not something that's in our culture, but it wouldn't leave me. This idea that Jesus consistently saying, "Hey, I've made something for you to enjoy. Why won't you pick it up? Why won't you receive it from me?" So it was there, and it was niggly. But every time I kind of started to look into it, I would come across people that were almost so obsessive about Sabbath that it was almost like Sabbath was their God. Right. It was the thing that they worshipped rather than the creator of the universe. And probably being a bit unfair to most of them, but that was how it came across. Yeah. Then we had the blessing that was lockdown. Now, it was a blessing for us, I mean, and for many, but for some I know it's been really, really tough, so I don't want to make light of that. But I had 2 books that were I was introduced to. One of them was The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry that was recommended by somebody, and the other one was a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality that Sam Griffiths, the Baptist pastor, gave me as a gift and said, "Hey, you should read this. It's really good." And so because we had lockdown, or had the time to read them. Wasn't it funny? Lockdown happened and we could just rest.
Yeah.
Space
Yeah.
to think and to decompress. And I read these books and they introduced Sabbath and brought teaching to it that I'd not really been exposed to before. And it was fantastic. And so Jade and I, my wife, started having discussions about it, talking on and off. And I just felt this urge, and again, coming back to me, the phrase from a year and a half ago, Jesus says, I made Sabbath for you. And I was like, wow, I think I really want to receive that and begin to understand it and know what it is. And yeah, we've been feeling our way forward in this as well. I think like a lot of us have. I started talking to a bunch of people about it because I wanted to make sure I wasn't going mad. You know, am I hearing from the Lord? Is this, you know, am I going to end up walking around with a strange heart and some pigtails, you know, and am I going to have to give up bacon sandwiches? Heaven forfend. And so I wanted to talk to people about it and just get opinion. You know, there's a lot of wisdom comes with the counsel of many heads, isn't there? And I find that actually as I started chatting about it, more people were saying, hey, me too. I've been thinking about this. Or, I mean, usually they've read John Mark Comer's book and they were like, oh, hey, yeah, I read that book too and it's amazing. And I've been thinking, so it's got us chatting, and as a church leadership, we've been talking about it as well. And then obviously jumped on to Scott, heard Scott say, you know, he's been practicing Sabbath for years. Like, wow, okay, well then obviously I'm not going mad, and this is something that we could really probably benefit from looking into a bit more. And so I did a whole bunch of study, and thankfully last week, Scott and Bruce covered a ton of the stuff, so I don't have to cover it now. I was a bit nervous last week because I've been banging on about Sabbath and getting really excited about it and putting my own cute little Bible study together. And when I heard, the teacher is going to come and teach on Sabbath, I went, oh no, how much am I going to have to cross-site and go wrong? But actually none of it. It was, praise the Lord, it was all the things that God had shown me, you know, about Sabbath relating to tithing and all kinds of other things. I thought, oh, wow, thank you, Lord. So we've started to practice it as a family, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit about the practicalities of that.
Yeah.
But I did want to just jump into a couple of passages, if that's all right. I just wanted to share with everybody.
So obviously what would be really helpful, because I know last week when Scott and Bruce were talking was really helpful, is when comments from you guys is obviously going to be helpful, questions, whether we can answer them all, but even if it's just comments of, hey, actually we've been doing this and we found this to be helpful, it's helpful for all of us just to be able to read through those. So if you kind of have something, you know, you might be like, it might feed off of something Trev says, you know, just like, hey, actually, we've done this as a family and this was really good. So, you know, please don't hold back on commenting, and, you know, if it's questions, shoot questions. That's just helpful to kind of keep the flow. We don't want to just be like rabbiting on from this end. So yeah, carry on, Trev.
Good point. And also, you know what, if you've got concerns, if you're like, I don't like the direction that this is heading, and maybe you've got a history of coming from a really legalistic place where actually this is beginning to make you feel very uncomfortable, we'd love to hear from you. Because the thing is, we can all get really excited about certain things, can't we? And bull ahead, well, at least I can, and get all excited and carried away and tend to not be very sensitive to people. And so sometimes you need to be softly to catch that monkey, rather than, not that I'm calling anyone monkeys, by the way. But let's read the Bible, shall we? All right, so Genesis 2, 1-3 is the first time we actually hear about Sabbath. And this is what it says. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. So that's the first time we hear it, and we note that it's a day in the week that God has actually blessed. It's the only day that God has put a blessing on, Sabbath rest. And to me that speaks volumes, that if we can enter into this sanctuary in time, if we can enter into this space that God has carved out for us, we're entering into a blessed time. It's not just a day off.
Yeah.
It's actually, we're entering into something pretty holy, pretty special, something that God himself has blessed. And so here we then get to Exodus 16, and this is the first time God introduced the Sabbath to his people.
Right.
And it's before Mount Sinai, it's before the law, it's before the Ten Commandments. And obviously, as we've just heard, the concept in God's mind and intention was right rooted in creation, the creation week. So that's where God says, I'm rooting this here. It's, as foundational as man and woman. It's foundational as, caring for the earth. It's foundational as all those things. So let's just read this, and I'll get through it pretty quickly without any interruptions. But I think it's important to read all of it so that we can get a context. Yeah. They set out for Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. So they're 6 weeks in on their journey. They've been out of Egypt 6 weeks. The whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. I'm not going to, there's so much we could say about that. Let's just move on. Then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you. And the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. I just want to pause there real quick. Now, the reason God is doing this way, he states it here, so that he can test them. Right. Will they obey my instructions? It says walk in my law, but actually the footnote says whether they will, can they follow instructions? Right. The law hasn't been given, so if we read this as if, it's an issue of the law, we're reading it wrong. That word that's translated law, Torah, it just means instruction. So basically what God is saying here, I want to test my people. Will they trust me? Right. Will they trust me and walk in my instructions or not? This is the whole reason that he gives here. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. So Moses and Aaron said to all the people of Israel, at evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against the Lord. Now I'm going to skip down because they kind of repeat themselves, because they're having a bit of a pop at them and saying it wasn't really us you were grumbling at, it was God. So they got on down here. Verse 13. In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp. And in the morning, dew lay around the camp. And when the dew had gone up, there was on the face of the wilderness a fine flake-like thing, fine as frost on the ground. When the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather of it, each one of you, as much as he can eat. You shall each take an omer, according to the number of persons to each of you has in his tent. And the people of Israel did so. They gathered some more, some less, but when they had measured it with an omer, whoever gathered much had nothing left over, and whoever had gathered little had no lack. Each of them gathered as much as he could eat, and Moses said to them, let no one leave any of it over till the morning. But they did not listen. Remember what God was saying? I want to see if they can follow instructions. Apparently not. They did not listen to Moses. Some left part of it till the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. Morning by morning they gathered it, each as much as he could eat. But when the sun grew hot, it melted. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers each. And when all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, he said to them, this is what the Lord has commanded. Tomorrow is a day of rest, a solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over lay it aside to keep it until the morning. So they laid it aside till the morning as Moses commanded them, and it did not stink, and there were no worms in it.
Amazing.
Moses said, eat it today, For today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it. But on the seventh day, which is a Sabbath, there will be none. On the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather. See, these guys, seriously? Anyway, I mean, they've just come out of Egypt.
Twice in 7 days.
They have seen God do the most amazing things. And he says, will you try? And they're the numpties. Anyway. Anyway, I shouldn't mock. I don't know what I would have done in that. But I like to imagine. Do you ever read a story and somebody does something really dumb in the Bible? That wouldn't have been me. I'm far too humble to have done something so arrogant as that. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws or my instructions? See, the Lord, now listen, hear what God says here. The Lord has given you this Sabbath. Therefore, on the sixth day, he gives you bread for 2 days. Remain each of you in his place. Let no one go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. And there's so much in this. But what we hear more than anything else is rooted in creation, rooted in the way God made us. God's first, he's just brought his people out of Egypt. This is the first time. He's had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's one bloke and some kids. Yeah. Now you've got a nation of people. And he's brought them out in 6 weeks, and he wants to show them some things. And he wants to show them, if you trust me, if you follow my instructions, I'll provide for you from heaven. And you won't need to strive. And you can rest. It's like having a snow day every week where you don't have to go and do anything. 24 hours every week. Doing nothing, people. This is amazing. Do you know what I mean? Every single week. But he says, if you trust me, if you follow my instructions, I've blessed this day. Enter into it and find rest for your souls. And we get supernatural provision for the rest of the 6. And it's fantastic. Can I just one more thing, just one little thing. It's bouncing off of what Scott has taught. And I actually I couldn't remember this. And Jade reminded me that Scott was teaching when we lived in Kenosha. Scott did some teaching about operating from a place of rest 10 or 12 years ago. And he brought up a point that he brought up, I think, again last week, where Scott says that, in fact, you referenced it before, that God created man on day 6. So our first full day was a day of rest. And we operate from that place of rest. I now look at our week like I look at my hand. So how many days are in a week? 7. How many fingers am I holding up?
5.
Right. So I could be a bit more I mean, that's sort of right. But really I'm holding up 4 fingers and a thumb, if I'm going to be a bit picky. And the way I look at my week now is there's 6 days, right, and then there's Sabbath. Right. And my week starts from a place, well, my week abides in Sabbath. It's where I walk in the Garden of Eden with the Lord. It's where I rest. I focus on him. I'm refreshed. And then out of Sabbath, my week starts. And I count the days. Day 1, day 2, right the way through to day 6. Day 6 is the last day. And then back into Sabbath. The other 6 days are like days they're like planets that revolve around the sun. So that's the way I'm beginning to look at it. God is reforming and shaping my thinking about my whole life to be one where my life revolves around abiding in Christ. And he said, if you abide in me, you'll bear fruit. And I want to be somebody whose life isn't one marked by striving to be fruitful, but one that's marked by abiding. No, sorry. I don't want it to be one where it's marked by striving to be productive, but one that is marked by abiding and being fruitful. And that's what Sabbath has started to do, is to help me as we start to move towards that, is to actually be that way, and it's fantastic. So anyway, that's my rant.
Well, so we actually do have, hold this up, we actually do have a couple of questions coming in. I mean, one of the
Great.
things really interesting, which which you see is that it actually God established it as a, as you said, as a blessing, which kind of almost in a way, and whether this is because we've always been kind of hammered no legalism or no legalistic practices, we almost look at some of these things and almost feel, oh well, that's kind of that's going to be a hard thing to do or whatever. But actually, God initiated it as a blessing to man.
That's
So
right.
Coral's asked this. I'll just read it out. Excited to learn more about practicing Sabbath. This has been on my heart as well. Excited to learn how we do this in a culture surrounded by busybodies. I always feel like practicing the Sabbath means we can't do anything on our Sabbath. And how is this even possible?
Good point.
Good question.
Do you
Fire away.
Well, Cora, that is a great question. And the thing that I think is, first of all, spend time praying and seeking God for revelation on the gift of the Sabbath. If Sabbath is something that you've got to do, well then don't. You're under no obligation. But if Sabbath is something that you get to do, well, enter in with joy and figure out as you go along what you can and can't do. Now, the culture around us would be a little bit like the enemy. You know, the Bible calls the culture around us Babylon, right? The beast. And so it's always wanting to rob us of the gifts and the joy and the delight of the Lord. And you see, when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, they were quite content with everything they were allowed to do. And yet the enemy comes along and points out the one thing they weren't allowed to do. If we approach Sabbath in the same way and focus on the things that we can't do, then we're robbed of the joy of coming into Eden every 6 weeks, as how I picture it. And so there are things that you can't do, but it's not like we're not under law, and this isn't part of the law. This is actually entering into rest. It's entering into the grace and presence of God. Jesus said, if you abide in me, if my words abide in you, then you'll bear so much fruit. And if we don't stop. So I look at it this way. What would I rather have? A crazy busy life where I can't abide in the Lord? Or, a week that revolves around abiding in a day with the Lord. And sure, that means there's certain things that I'm going to elect not to do. There's going to be a battle that I have with certain things that because we're ingrained, we've got habits, there's things that we're used to doing certain things 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But if we want to enter into the Lord, into the rest of the Lord, I think what we do then is we start to put those things aside. And sure, there's going to be things that people are going to want to do around us or things that we ourselves are going to want to do. It's just a case of stopping and saying, and not being too onerous. I think you mentioned this either before about not being too legalistic.
Yeah.
And not being too heavy on it. But I would say this, the more we enter into that rest of the Lord, the more we cherish it.
Yeah.
And we will look at the things that we're not able to do and say, compared to being with Jesus, I don't even want that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Not on this day. Because this is the Sabbath. This is the day that God has blessed. And I'm not going to... Here's just on this thought. When God calls the Sabbath holy, that means it's set apart. It's not profane, because the opposite of holy is profane. Something that is profane is something that is of ordinary use. It's not dirty, it's not unclean in a sense of bad, but it's just ordinary and common. But when you begin to cherish the presence of the Lord and you begin to cherish the rest and you begin to cherish the blessing that He's put on this Sabbath day, well then, me personally, I find this, and other people that I've spoken to find it as well, they find that the more they journey in it, the less they want to have profane things on a Sabbath. It feels incongruous. Yesterday, so Sabbath finished for us as the sun set yesterday. And I, without thinking, I went into the kitchen to do something or other, making a coffee or whatever. I just reached over to my iPad and put on YouTube without even thinking about it. And so I put a video on, and literally within about 30 seconds a minute, I felt, hang on, that sounds jarring to me. This doesn't feel right. This is just, I'm not enjoying this. And then I remembered, it's Sabbath, and I turned it off. And I spent that time just talking to God, allowing the Holy Spirit to speak to me. It's amazing. So yes, Coral, to answer your question, there will be things that you can't do, but let it be balanced against, you know, Sabbath. Jesus says that it was made for us. It was made for you. So enter into it lightly initially, baby steps, and build it up. And begin to learn to cherish and grow in it. And you'll find you'll want to put aside things. And things that were once inviting, you're like, not on that day.
I mean, I think, you know, I was just talking to the kids about it this afternoon, and just almost, you know, it was kind of like, because obviously for the kids, it's getting their heads around, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. And, you know, it was kind of this list of things they couldn't do. And I was like, well, actually, the reality is, let's not think about the things we can't do. Let's think about the things that we can do. And we were just kind of talking to him. And obviously, the challenge we're facing, especially with young kids, is how, obviously, Scott talked about, you know, alone time and that kind of thing. And well, you know, with kids, it's just like, what is it, you know, even going to the loo, you don't have that luxury, you know, with kids, because every alone moment is invaded by, you know, by a little person. And so, you know, we're just talking kind of through, even just engaging with the kids and saying, okay, so what can we do? You know, let's talk about the things that we can do together as a family. You know, we can worship together, you know, kind of going through the things of, obviously, with it being a day set aside to God. It's like, okay, what are the things that we can do? Trying to build, because the challenge is going to be for us in practicing this is how we carry them with us and not actually kind of leave them aside. So even in that, Coral, kind of how we, you know, how do we, you know, what can we and can't we do? In my mind, I'm like, okay, we've got to come up with things that bring the kids along, so that we don't get to when they're 14, 15, 16 years old and they're like, we don't want to do this. Rather that they've actually caught the beauty of what this is.
That's right.
And, you know, and as I say, it's a journey of discovery for me, just even in looking and, you know, obviously having known the scriptures over the years, and, you know all these kind of things, and you've heard different things, but now kind of in a place where it's actually weighing it out and saying, okay, how does it actually look in our day? Like, you know, in today's society where everything is driven by purpose and busyness, and everyone you talk to, it seems like the discussions are almost more about how busy I am. Oh, I'm so busy at the moment. And it's almost like that's your accolade. Yeah, it's like your accolade, like I'm so busy at the moment. But actually the reality is where this is actually saying, no, I'm not too busy to have this day with God.
That's right.
And, you know, and so the journey for us is definitely going to be carrying the kids through this, and even for ourselves in being able to put down the things that you just, as you say, just knee-jerk reactions to be like on the phone or, you know, YouTube or whatever the nowadays knee-jerk reactions are. Like, I just want to relax. I'm going to sit down and watch a couple of, you know, funny YouTube videos or something. And it's just like, actually, no, it's thinking beyond that and saying, okay, God, what are the things that we can do now? And it's suddenly, I feel like it opens a whole new world. Like, in a weird way, the lockdown of COVID opened suddenly a window where you had time with your kids that you'd never had. It's just like suddenly, like, you know what, actually there's nothing planned. Not just today, there's nothing planned every day at that point. If we could be for the rest of our lives. You know, and who knows, we might be back there again, it seems. But hopefully not. But, you know, the funniest thing is actually having that time where you've got time.
I know.
And I think that was the gift that God, because you kind of think off the back, and I know, actually, let me read this question here.
I can't see all the questions up on mine, by the way, so if there's any coming in on YouTube, I'm probably going to miss them because I'm doing this restream thing.
There's one from Colin. There's one from Colin Whittle here, saying, "Was the Sabbath?" I mean, and I'm reading. I haven't read it, so we're reading. We're getting the gist of it as we read it. Colin, was the Sabbath rest a command before the fall? God never instructed Adam and Eve to actually rest on the seventh day like He did. According to what we read in the Bible, the law to actually observe the Sabbath rest came after the fall. What are your thoughts on this? I'll read it on. Also, because the Sabbath rest is in the 10 Commandments, shouldn't we uphold it? We don't lie just because we're not under the law, so why should we disregard the Sabbath as a command? God seems to mention a lot in the Old Testament about not forgetting the Sabbath. Oh, this is from Amy. It's something Colin and I have given much thought on.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Amy.
I think that's great. That is really good questions. I think, I mean, and again, I haven't, maybe other people can chip in with comments on this. We're just learning this and studying it ourselves and figuring out as we go along, so we don't always have all the answers, but to say that God did... So here's my understanding so far. We read that Adam and Eve would walk with the Lord in the cool of the evening. He walked with them every day in the garden before the fall. I don't think there would be any need to command a day of rest at that point. But just because it's not explicitly named in there, it's not to say that they didn't do it anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's not to say that they wouldn't have done that. Now, the Lord rested on that day. The Hebrew tradition holds that Noah kept the Sabbath. And so did Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now that's their tradition, because I've been reading I've been digging into this a lot over the last few months. I've been reading Jewish books. I've been reading, the Talmud and different bits, and listening to people teach on this. And so, way more information than I could digest probably, but their tradition is that they did keep the Sabbath, and there's no reason to suppose that they wouldn't have if it was something that God instituted in creation. So I would imagine that God would walk with them in the Garden of Eden in the cool of day, and then Sabbath would come around and they'd all just sit around all day enjoying the presence of the Lord, resting and being refreshed. And what was the other one? Yeah, the Ten Commandments. I get it. I totally agree. I mean, that was one of the things that when God started speaking to me about it, when Jesus was saying, I made Sabbath for you, and I would read the Ten Commandments, and I came the same thing. There is no reason why we wouldn't want to keep it at all. I mean, we're not under the law, but like has been mentioned, we wouldn't consider it right for anyone to commit adultery. Or murder, or make an idol and worship it. So, yeah, I think it's been an anomaly over the past bunch of decades why we haven't. And it seems like God is restoring it. Was there anything else?
Yeah, that's just obviously what was amazing with it, because after the fall, it was almost like this gift from God, wasn't it? Because obviously we know with the curse came the toil of the land, and that's when the hard work stepped in some ways for mankind.
Yeah.
And then God gives this, it's like this gift of the Sabbath was like, actually you can put that toil down for a day. So, it was the kindness of God. And what's really interesting is, and again, this is kind of starting to settle home with me. So don't want you to think I'm sitting here like I've got all the answers down and our Sabbath is amazing. But, it's almost like the Sabbath is a statement to ourselves that there are more important things than buying and selling, if I could use that as a phrase. There's more important things as much as our jobs and our lives and stuff, and the busyness of that is part of our lives. Yeah. There's something far more important, and it's actually this being with God. But it does feel in a weird way like it's this radical lifestyle change. Yeah. But it's actually, and I think Scott kind of, he kind of pointed to a couple of these things on Sunday night about, he used the tithe as an illustration of, the tithe started off as a disciplined practice. But actually it became a gateway to generosity. And I feel like there's so many principles of God where it starts off as it's a discipline. It's something you need to instill or put in place in your life. But then what starts to happen is you start to see out of that. And even Bruce kind of said it, there's that something of being obedient to God. Rather than thinking, what are the benefits for me? It's actually out of obedience, the benefits follow. And I think that's, that to me is kind of, it just hits home as like, actually, yes, it does seem like a radical lifestyle change. But actually, when we implement it in our lives, in my case, I'm like, what's going to change? I'm excited to see what's actually ahead. Let's revisit this in a year and be like, okay, look what's happened in our lives. Our Saturdays, in our case, because Sarah's asked you what day. Yep. So, what day do you guys do it? What does it look like? Do you see other people? Basically, how does it look in your families? for me personally, at the moment, it feels so fresh, like it's so new that it feels chaotic. The first day we did it, so we've chosen a Saturday at the moment just because it's a day that works, and obviously Sundays are often quite busy anyway. But our first Saturday, we started out, good intention, and realized it was the Saturday before the school term started.
Oh, yeah.
Boys needed shoes. It's just like, oh, okay, we're going to have to go and do this. Our first day was kind of essentially this buying day, which, I kind of was like, well, okay, there's literally nothing we can do. Yeah. Tomorrow's going to be busy. We'll miss it. And then the boys are going to be going in my shoes to school, which just wouldn't have worked. But, so I feel like it still feels really messy. Like, it feels like we get in our heads around, okay, what does it mean? We're trying to do the whole no screen, so kind of just an unplug from the digital life, unplug from that, unplug from work. And again, Marie's self-employed. I've been self-employed and now in a company. And so there's always this drag of work that kind of bleeds into every area of your life. And it's just trying to be like, okay, actually, I don't need to do that. I don't need to respond to that, or it's just kind of so Sarah, to answer that for us, we're doing it on a Saturday. It still feels massively messy. It really does. I feel like it's like, okay, I know it's going to be a blessing. At the moment it feels like it's the effort, and it's it's the effort of I don't know if that answers it.
I think for us, I get amen, exactly the same thing. It's a bit messy. We're sort of feeling our way through all of this, but we decided I'd like to make a point. Now, I'm making this point tentatively because I'm not certain on it yet. I think that there's a difference between the Sabbath and a Sabbath. What I mean is this. The more I study Scripture, the more I look into understanding the way the Jews, the Hebrews, have kept Sabbath throughout all this time. So we just read in Exodus 16, people would say, well, how did the Jews know what day the Sabbath was? Well, because on the 6th day of the week, God gave them twice as much manna, and they knew that the next day was going to be Sabbath. And they've kept a pretty good record since then. Right. So that they know that is the day of rest. That's the Sabbath day. And also, I think as I reflect on this and I'm meditating on it, I've got way more time. Since I've started practicing Sabbath, and we started way more time, way more meditative, way more thoughtful. It's almost like it's created this haven, this sanctuary in time and space that's pushing the world out, that's allowing me to be with the Lord more and more. And I'm absolutely loving every minute of it. And it bleeds into the rest of the week. So I think there's a day, it says in Scripture, that the Lord stopped, he rested, and he called it Sabbath, and he blessed that day. I believe that's Sabbath. Now, for the Hebrews, a day starts when the sun sets. That's the start of the day, is at sunset, and it finishes the following sunset. So their days work that way. Because in Genesis, and again, I didn't know until I started reading in Jewish literature, about the Sabbath. So in Genesis, it talks about in the creation account, God did this stuff. And I've read it with a very kind of European Greek kind of way of linear things, but the Hebrews weren't quite so linear as we are. And so I read, God did a whole bunch of stuff, and then there was evening, and then there was morning, and that was the first day. And I kind of thought, okay, so he did a whole bunch of stuff in the day, and then it was the evening, and then when it got to the next morning, that was the end. That's how I read it, but the Hebrews don't read it that way, because they say God did a whole bunch of stuff on the day. And then that phrase of the end, as they've interpreted it ever since they wrote it, is that the evening and the morning, the interpretation actually isn't evening or morning. The Hebrew word is night and day, is what apparently they tell me that's what those words mean. So it's describing what God did, and then it's describing the order, night and then day. So the first day started at nighttime and finished with the day. So it ended when the day ended, which was sunset. Right. And so the Jews have their days go from sundown to sundown. Right. And so Sabbath starts for them sundown on Friday. Sabbath starts when the sun sets on our Friday. Wow. And Sabbath finishes then. We do that. And we do that because I've read something else I read about somebody who's a Messianic Jew. Good. I think, honestly, I do think there are people that kind of obsess about this and read way more into it. But it also might be that they've got a revelation from the Lord on it. I don't know. But he was saying there's something about the concept where you finish your work week and you have a whole evening to rest and unwind. Right. But you don't, because you have people over. You have a huge Sabbath meal. Right. With the community of the people of God. Mm-hmm. It goes late into the day, but there's something about having that and knowing you don't have to get up the next morning. You can have a lie-in, and you can rest and be refreshed. So for us, our Sabbath runs from sundown on a Friday to sundown on the Saturday. And that's our Sabbath. We do see people, we're trying to, with Judah, it's a bit complicated and a bit difficult. It's not always easy. But we want to try and, we're building up that we're having a feast on the Friday, to which we'd like to start inviting people to come. Or if not on the Friday, it might be on the Saturday. It can be a bit chaotic. Mm-hmm. So we want it, the key thing is we want it for our families to be restful and refreshing for all of us, including Jade. I don't know her getting burnt out. But also then to open up, because there is a community element to Sabbath. So some people can't do the Saturday. So that's where I would make the again, it's tentative. It might. I'm open for somebody to correct me and say, no, you're wrong because of X, Y, and Z. But I think there's Sabbath and then there's a Sabbath. And I think if people can't keep Sabbath, then a Sabbath is great. Honestly, you'll be refreshed and God will bless you. So we do see people, and we'll plan on going to the beach or going for a walk, enjoying creation, enjoying nature. For us, it's no screens. Right. But we can't do that with Judah. And we're not imposing this on our kids. No. For us, we are slowly, me and Jade are trying to work this out first, and we're slowly bringing the kids into it. Right. So we're going to figure out our Sabbath meal. We're just about figured out a Friday night meal. So we're having party food, y'all. We had falafel this Friday. We had cold meats. We had pizza. That feels like a real sacrifice. We had chicken nuggets. We had loads of stuff, yummy, like stuffed olives, stuffed peppers, loads of really nice stuff. So that everybody, and we had the family around. Because Mercy has swimming lessons at 5:30, so Jade and Mercy get back at about, or 5, or whatever, get back at about 6-ish. I've fed Judah already because he's hungry, and I've laid out party food. And Isaac comes in, Toby's at university now, so Isaac comes and sits around. We all sit around the table together, and we all just dig in, and we give thanks to God. And, you know, for the first time this Friday, we kind of had that, but also want to pray in the Sabbath and the day of rest. And so we're slowly going to integrate the kids and make it real fun, so that it's something they learn to look forward to and call a delight, rather than, all right, Mercy, it's Sabbath, you're not allowed the iPad. Because then that would be a real crummy thing for her. She wouldn't look forward to it. But if it's, hey, we all have fun food on the Friday and we play and Daddy has more time to do crafts with me, then I think she'll start to look forward to it as a delight and a blessing. Yeah. I want my children to look forward to it as a time when Daddy blessed them. Yeah. So.
You're so kind, Trev. We've just slammed our kids into it. Like.
You will do this. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
So there's a couple of... Sam, I don't know, Sam, I feel like I might have answered yours. You just said, Chris, how have you found practicing the Sabbath rest for you and your family? I mean, I just feel like it's such early days for us. I do look forward to the benefits. What's really interesting, and again, Matt has said here, I'm trying to find it now, as Jesus fulfilled the law, do we not have a Sabbath through him every day rather than needing a special day for it? And I feel like Scott kind of touched on this in the whole thing of actually the practicing of the principle of the Sabbath then does actually become, we're working from that place of rest every day. So, I feel like there is something of a principle that is important to catch here. And what's really interesting is how God's principles always work.
Yeah.
Like we've...
funny that, isn't it?
I know. Over the last couple of years, we've been doing on and off this particular food diet, and it's based out of Leviticus, and it's based out of what God told the Israelites they couldn't eat. And what's really interesting is how amazingly it works. And it's for me, for certain issues that I have, and lo and behold, It works.
Wow,
And so I think there's something about practicing the principles of God that sometimes it may not make sense initially, but as we go into it and as we start to engage in what God has said in these things, we start to see the benefits of it. And so I do, Sam, and going back to your question, I know we're going to see the benefits of this. It just feels like early days for us. And, even hearing Trev here, I'm like, okay, it's because I want to engage the kids. I really do. I want the kids to come along with this because like the whole journey of our Christian walk, I want them to be getting this and be like, when they get to our age, it's like, yeah, we're doing this, man. We walk in this thing out.
That's right. We want our kids to say, hey, you know what? It's like we want them to love it. The scripture all the way through, God says, and encourage us and the Israelites, when they practice this properly, they say things like, you know what? Sabbath is a delight. Call it a delight. Something that should delight. Don't we want something to delight in? Can I just share something again, just on what Matt's point is? We have this thing with Jesus every day rather than needing a special day. That sense of needing, do we have to do this? No, we don't have to do this. We don't got to do this. We get to do this. It's an amazing thing. I would just say, Matt, why don't you try? Why don't you give it a go? We say this about tithing, don't we? God says with tithing, he says, test me in this. See if I will not open the storehouse of heaven for you. Give Sabbath a go. God took one day out of the week, and he's blessed that day. He said, if you enter into this day in an attitude to honor me and to rest from your work, if you make this day holy, in other words, if it's not profane, or if it's not just like all the other days, well, then there'll be blessing to be found in it. And so when we enter into that with that mindset that it's not going to be just another day, it's a day of rest and refreshing and focusing on God. It is a day of delight.
Yeah.
It has charged my whole week with a sense of anticipation. Really. We look forward to preparing. Preparation day is exciting on a Friday. Me and Jade are talking about it on Thursday night. I'm like, Jade, what do I need to get tomorrow in the store so that when Sabbath starts, when the sun goes down, when Mercy gets back from swimming and we sit around the meal and eat our party food, I don't want to have to go anywhere. I don't want to go to the shop. So I'm going to make sure I've got everything. And it's going to be, without being reckless with the budget, I'm going to get the nice stuff.
Nice.
I'm going to treat the kids and get them the fridge raiders. Even though they got too much salt, they are yummy, delicious. And we're going to put those bad boys on the table and eat them. So it's something I would just recommend everybody, please, just step into the blessing of Sabbath and give it a go. Hey, if you go for it and you find no blessing of the Lord in it, then feel free to step out. You don't got to do this.
Yeah.
You really don't.
Marie's just actually texted me and she said, our kids are really excited about it as they know it's family time and we're not as distracted. And I think there's so much truth in that.
Yeah.
So Coral said here, what did you mean by there is something about the community with the Sabbath? I've never thought of this. I've never thought of it this way.
Well, as I've looked more into this and studied the scripture, and obviously it's interesting to me, and it kind of links into this point that somebody mentioned, I think it was Colin and Amy mentioned earlier on, about before, that we don't really see Sabbath mentioned. So it's mentioned at the point of creation. So it's given its Genesis there. See what I did there? It's given its Genesis there in the book in the beginning. And so it's rooted in creation. So it's given its eternal value there. The next we read about it in Scripture is when God is instructing his people. He's just called out of Egypt his people. And he said to them, you are to be my nation on earth, my representative. You see, I think also this is why the Hebrews were commanded to keep Sabbath. Because why? Well, the Hebrews were, in Old Testament times, They were to be the royal priesthood. They were to be, you see, God didn't choose only the Hebrews. He chose them for a reason. And what was that reason? The reason was that they would be a people of the covenant that would be a blessing to the whole world. They were supposed to live their life in such a way as to show the rest of the world, this is how you live in communion with Yahweh, your creator, to be able to enter into the blessings and to be able to somehow attain a measure of access to Eden again, until the Lord comes and restores the Messianic kingdom. They were supposed to be that. They were supposed to live. That's why you have, even in the commands of Sabbath and many of the other commands, it is not just for it says, if you look to Exodus 20, if you look to the other scriptures where it talks about Sabbath, it says, you, your servants, and the sojourner who lives among you, the foreigner who is with you. It was for everybody to have this rest. Why? Well, they were commanded to, but the other people got to get into the benefit of it. So the rest of the world gets the benefit. So to get to my point, the Hebrew people were called to be that example. They were to live a life to show us that it's possible to live a life that isn't striving to be productive, even in a cursed world, but a place where we could abide and rest and be fruitful. But when you look at Sabbath, God introduces it to his whole people, and it's a community thing for the whole people. When you look at it through the history of the Hebrews, and you read the Talmud and you read what they did, watch The Chosen. Honestly, that one when it talks about the Sabbath meal, there was such a joy and a delight around the Sabbath meal. And when I read about, and I'm reading, or listening mostly on Audible, books about Sabbath, it's all about the community of the people of God coming together and entering into this day of blessing, to rest together. And you eat meals together, you fellowship together, you go for walks together, you pray together. Why? Why could you, hey, do you know, you can do this because nobody's doing anything on that day. It's a day off. No, it's more than a day off. It's the day of blessing, where everybody has the same. This is where I think, personally and tentatively, I'm doing that because I'm just waiting for an email from Scott Goodwell or John Ladgy, tentatively suggest that I think there's a difference between the Sabbath and a Sabbath. For me, at this point, the Sabbath would be the one to go for if you can.
Right.
Because if the people of God are all enjoying the same blessed day, I can wander down to Kevin and Julie, up to, Ben and Angela. I could go down to Richard and Katie. Now, it might not be a blessing to them. But if I know that the people of God...
Week, not early in the morning.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Judah woke up at 5 again. Thought I'd pop in for a coffee. But if the majority of the people of God have entered into rest, then the chances of us being able to do the fellowship that we all long for is increased massively. We all hear over and over again that we would love to hang out together and eat meals together, but we can't because we're all busy and we're all separate and all doing. That is a device of Satan to divide the people of God. But if we as a people together can enter into Sabbath together, a day that God has set aside as holy and blessed it, and we enter into that, I guarantee the majority of us that do will be, we can start inviting people over for Sabbath meals. If Friday isn't working, Friday night, Saturday. What about lunchtime Saturday? Hey, I'm not doing anything. I'm not busy. I'm not working. I'm not doing the books. We're not going to Asda. We're around. Yeah, let's do it. Come, lonely people, single people, people that haven't got much to do. Hey, there's going to be dozens of families throughout the fellowship of believers, all doing nothing but enjoying the Lord and enjoying his creation. That's why I believe, because Sabbath was first announced amongst the community, and whenever you read how the Hebrews do it, it was all about the community of the people of God feasting together and giving thanks to God.
Good. Well, I mean, I think our time is pretty much done.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You know, I think there's a couple of comments on there, people sort of saying stuff that they've done. I think, I think it's great. I think it's definitely, let's be talking about it, Let's be talking about it and, let God speak to us, and I think it boils down to a trust thing. It's trusting God that, okay, God, if this is what you're saying, you're able to do it. And,
That's right.
And, as Tref said, go for it. Give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. Honestly, you've got nothing to lose and all to gain.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you. Thanks for the comments and the questions. It's been great to interact with you guys in this way. And Trev, fantastic, great to be with you. Dave,
Yeah,
once
you too.
again, thank you so much for all that you do to pull this together. Guys, have a fantastic week. And God bless.
Yeah, God bless. And just to say, be talking to each other, and how about you invite people over and talk about it? You know, we've got the rule of 6, haven't we?
Yeah. Don't invite more
try
than
and
6.
keep the rule of 6. Officially, you're not allowed to meet in more than 6 at the moment. But you know what? Let's explore this further.
Good.
Amen. Be blessed. Love you all.
God bless. Bye.